My name is Jo Grishman. This is Art Blog number 122.
My name is Jacob Wool. Thank you for having me here, Jo.
My pleasure.
Today we're here in the Basic Space Gallery in the Everett Street Lofts. And there is a show going on here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this show?
Absolutely. It's Detritus, and it's a three-person show with Christopher Roberts, Kenny Saylor, and myself. And we each did work separately with the same thought in mind about what is detritus and how we could relate to the idea of that word, which was fragments of pieces of ourselves that we leave behind, the debris of life, and everybody can relate to that in different ways. So we kind of approached that idea in how we felt about that, about the memories that make us who we are today, the things that have hurt us and scarred us, but those scars are there forever. Those memories, those ghosts, those relationships that don't work anymore that we've had to leave behind, but they all leave that impact, they leave that mark. And so we responded to that word, responded to each other, and we came together with our work. And when we put it down, we put it around, we kind of saw, wow, they really do talk to each other. So we were really, really pleased with the outcome of it.
How did this show come about?
Well, we met each other. We were all members passing and at some point at Gallery 114. And we just stayed in touch, and we just kind of had this conversation, you know, let's show together, because we just seemed like we were kind of, you know, you meet I was told by somebody once, you meet your art family. You meet people that are kind of on that same wavelength with you, that kind of want to do the same things. And we just had this feeling like we would click, and we were constantly in conversation, and we knew that at one point it would happen. And it kind of created this feeling of magic that when we looked at each other's work, and how like the hair on your arm sticks up, and it's like, it feels like, this became something bigger than each of us individually.
Right.
And that's when you know the magic of three people becoming a fourth. And so it felt really, really satisfying to birth this together.
So do you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in New York City, and I was, for all intent and purpose, an only child, and in kind of a tumultuous family life. And I kind of created my own little world, I call it. And I would be underneath a baby grand piano creating imaginary worlds or in a world by myself, and not socializing with other children very much, but just mostly in my head. I think I did, and currently and probably will forever have a chronic case of daydreaming. And that's not such a bad thing.
No, not at all.
So I was always going somewhere. And the funny thing is, I always graduated with almost straight A's, almost on, and with honors, and I have absolutely no idea how, because I never paid attention. I would, with book reports, I'd start out reading the book, I never read it, I went to the end, and then I created a diorama of found objects, little worlds. And so it was always making things. And with colored pencils, I would take fabric and I would sit under the piano with a stapler. And I would staple the fabric into doll clothes. I would take my dolls and I would take magic marker and I would change their faces, and I would cut their hair, and my mother would be incredibly not happy. There was a collector's item, Shirley Temple doll with wonderful curls, and I decided to give her a do. And so, you know, I was just always doing things with my hands, always just making stuff up. And so it just seemed like a natural way of escaping life and finding life and creating life. And so I think in isolating myself, I was creating my own little world.
Wow.
And so that kind of just, I think, has always continued, even though now I feel like I live in the world, and I love the world that I live in. But now I've made it a place where I think by creating things, it gives me a place to put things and channel the crap that's happening, or the wonderful things that are happening. It's like, you know, where am I going to put this? It's really cathartic. And I think that if I didn't have art, I don't know if I'd be able to thrive. It's like a lifeline.
Did you take art classes? Did you do well in art classes?
I took one art class growing up, and the teacher said, "Wow, you have a lot of talent." And then never thought of pursuing it in school, and I think I took one art class in college, and again, never thought of pursuing it. But my mom used to take me to the Museum of Modern Art and the Metropolitan Museum, and we would walk around Greenwich Village. They would have street art shows, and she would look at a piece and say, "Oh, I really like that piece. Could you go home and make a piece kind of like that?" And I have this piece that is actually hanging in my daughter's house now of this old man, and she would just say, "Oh, I like a piece with this mood," and I would go home and just make it up. And for the most part, everything I've done, I've made it up as I go along. But when my kids were grown, I said, I probably should go to art school and figure out how to really make art. So I went to the Maryland Institute, and we were living there at the time, and I took a post-baccalaureate program, and I got to pick and choose like a smorgasbord of food buffet in all different departments. And I figured out now I'll learn how to really make art. And I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot of different things, but I realized that kind of my personal Bible is The Wizard of Oz, and you take this journey, and I guess it's kind of like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. You do all this thing to figure out, and then you realize you had it all along. And I realized, no, I learned some skillful things, but I really have been doing that all along, and I never sculpted ever there. In the 2 years that I was at the Maryland Institute, I did mixed media, mostly painting, but whenever I painted with my hands, moving the paint around, making figures, never thinking about the background. And somebody said to me once, "Well, maybe you're a sculptor." And I kind of thought, it never dawned on me. And I've always collected stuff. I mean, my family is like, "What are you going to do with that?" I said, "Someday, you'll see, you'll see." So I picked up clay, and the minute I touched it, I was like, I'm home. So I'm always finding things from nature when I walk. Taking a hike with me is a very lengthy process. I'm filling my backpack.
What's your process when starting a new piece?
As I say, I collect pieces from nature. I collect found objects. Nothing, I'm always looking. I also collect words. Lines of poetry, song lyrics, song titles, and I never sketch. I kind of sketch in my brain. And so collecting all those things are inspirations for me. And then I'll just sit down and surround myself with all my stuff and experiences and thoughts or what I'm going through at that moment. And then I just put a wad of clay in front of me, and I start just touching it and moving it with absolutely no intention at all. And then it starts to take form, and it starts to kind of have a conversation with me. And then I look at this stuff and I say, "Oh, I think you need to be with this, and you need to be with this, and well, this is what you're about." And it's so magical for me because it just kind of comes together, and it tells me a story. And like this piece, I was going through, this piece is called Veil of Indifference. I was having some deteriorating eye problems. And my vision was actually as if I was looking through a curtain, like a veil. It was all distorted and all shaded, and it was extremely upsetting because I am such a visual person. It's upsetting for anybody to think that they might lose their vision. And I was entering into a time where I knew I was going to be having eye surgery, and I was really frightened. And I was reaching out to people in my life who I thought were present. And I asked for help, which is really hard for me, and no one answered. And I kept asking for help, and no one answered. And after the surgery, when I first started sculpting again, this is the first piece I made. And as I was making it, and I had this wing, this pheasant wing, I started to just make it, and I was feeling just so hurt and so angry. And I said, "This is what it's about. love indifference. And I think, although my pieces are all really personal narrative pieces, I don't think there's anybody, if they're really honest, who's ever not experienced that feeling of X. Maybe opening their heart to somebody and then having the person respond like this. Or you walk by somebody in need and they say, you know, have a good day, and you just ignore them like they don't exist. And so I feel like, I hope with my pieces, people look at them and they can somehow relate on their own personal level and maybe bring their personal story and meet me at my personal story. They don't have to know my personal story to be able to understand it. So I think that's my process, is that it kind of creates itself, it surprises me, it becomes a life of its own, and that's where the magic is for me, which keeps me happy.
How long have you been working with clay and found objects?
Let's see, I've been living in Portland now for 11 years, and I probably started using clay 5 years before that when I was living in Maryland. And I think I started collecting things then as well. I collect birds' nests, and I have pieces that incorporate that. And I think a lot of them as kind of earth and other goddesses, and sort of meditations. Like I find lots of little pieces in the needle in a haystack that feel like, I end up putting them here, like third eye meditations, and they feel very, very spiritual and very, very contemplative to me, very quiet. And so I feel like Mother Nature is so beautiful, I can never imitate her, and I feel like I collaborate with her, and I can't see myself never doing that, because she's like this wealth of gifts. And I had a solo show last year, my first solo show ever.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. It was like, it was a dream of a lifetime. And I made 108 hand-built ceramic ladder-back chairs, and I hung them on the wall. And each chair, it marked time for me. It held a found object from nature, and they each told a story to me, and it had a name on the back that was only important to me about what was going on in my life at the time. And I went through a transition of going through difficult times with my mother, and then eventually losing my mother. And it was just it was such a great thing to collect these pieces of nature, and I felt like I was honoring them in the chair. And
what an amazing show. Awesome.
It was something that I will never forget. It touched me so deeply. And then people actually came, and it was really hard for me to let go. And I'm learning to let go, and in life and in my work. And people actually bought individual chairs, and people were saying, how can you bring this? And I said, now I feel like the installation continues. And the name of the piece was called Waiting. And it took me a couple of years to kind of process and create this piece. So I feel like I will forever collaborate with Mother Nature in some way.
That's awesome. What are some of the places that you're showing right now?
Okay, aside from here, I have a solo show at a yoga studio, home-based yoga, in Hillsdale. And I have 15 assemblage pieces called Little Worlds, actually. And they are wooden pieces that are actually from the Rebuilding Center. They're found objects from old buildings that excuse me, I think they're from foundations. They're meant for basement ventilation. But when I looked at them, they seemed like these perfect pieces that